Mess with my kids? Lose your house. Posted by Outrageous Duck 164. I, a 50-year-old male, have 2 stepsons, who I just call my sons as I've been in their life since they're 8 and 10, and they're now young men. My wife and I made it a point to have a great relationship with their dad, Jason, and made sure that he had a chance to be around as much as possible, even staying at our place frequently to be around his boys, as he lived over an hour away and couldn't afford to live closer. Jason had a crazy ex-girlfriend who had tried to claim that they were married, variously saying common law, or that they were married in secret, or married on an Indian reservation. But he had a restraining order out against her because she was nuts and had tried various ways to screw up his life. The ex is a horrible person. She had been arrested several times for forgery and fraud. She and Jason had a fiery relationship, but he had it in his head that he should make it work, as he did like her daughters and grandson. But the ex got him sent to prison for violating his probation when he left the county to go to his mom's funeral and hadn't filed an appropriate form. I'm a little unclear on this part, but she played a major role in it. After he got out several months later, she wanted him back and he wasn't having it. He made a clean break, moved to a new town, but she continued to harass him, thus leading to the restraining order. She would send texts to people pretending to be police investigating, saying that he was drunk driving or taking drugs, or pretending to be friends and family to spread rumors and hurt him. She even sent texts to my kids from burner phones, pretending to be other family or friends, saying awful things about their dad. Jason died unexpectedly of a heart attack, and it was a shock to all of us. He was finally living in peace, had great relationships with friends and his sons, and was the happiest that he'd ever been. He didn't have much. He lived in a single-wide trailer that a friend had let him stay in for free, some boxes of tools, old comics, video games. He had D&D books and modules, mementos from his times in the Marines, and an old 2009 pickup, which, on several occasions, he had promised my oldest son. Let's call him Paul. Jason did not have a will, and my wife became the executor of the estate because, at the time of death, both the sons were minors and the sole heirs. We packed up the things out of Jason's trailer and took the truck, which had Jason's name on the title, but we had to wait for the death certificate to retitle it in Paul's name. But the ex called Jason's sister, demanding the truck, saying it was hers and posting on Facebook that she was reporting it as stolen and so on, which really ticks me off. After we got the death certificate, we went to the DMV and found out that she had stolen the title to the truck by forgery, saying that she was the only heir and we couldn't transfer the title. My son was driving around with a packet documenting everything in case he was pulled over for driving a stolen vehicle. We had to get a lawyer and start a special process that took several months before a director at the DMV fixed it, and we were able to title the truck with the ex continuing to threaten and cause problems, and it made everyone miserable, and then it cost us several $1,000s in legal fees. Early last year, we got through probate court and the ex never showed, in spite of saying that she was the wife and the sole heir. The court declared the boys as the sole heirs and my wife as the executor of the estate in their names. Instead of showing up, the ex sent an email to the court saying that she couldn't make it because of work, she doesn't have a job, and that Jason was never around his kids. He didn't miss a single high school football game, home or away, and never missed a home track meet, and that they were just leeching off his SSI for the back child support. She went on with a bunch of other non-relevant crap just to trash my wife and sons, and pretty much said that it didn't matter what the judge said, that she should get everything. During this time, we found out that Jason's name was on the deed of the ex's house. In order to get a reduction in property taxes because of Jason's disabled veteran status, she had filed papers to put him on the deed, but not the mortgage. If she had just left my kids alone, we would have let it go, but she had pushed principal beyond the point of denial, so we filed suit for half the house. The property is worth about $380,000. We went to court-ordered mediation, and she rejected a mediated settlement of a fraction of the value, which we would have taken. In April, her lawyer dropped her, and so she got a continuance on the first hearing. She then claimed that she had found a will from Jason, designating her as the sole heir, in addition to another signed paper that she found as a quitclaim deed from Jason for the house. I did wonder if it was this or her not paying him which caused him to drop her. She was going to go back to probate court to reopen or appeal probate and needed time for that, which the judge granted. On Tuesday, finally went to court on the deed to the house. She no-showed. The judge had inquiries to the probate court and she never filed any papers. The trial lasted less than 10 minutes as the judge recorded the facts and awarded the estate half the property. They will impanel 3 lawyers to determine how the property will be sold, and she's going to lose her house and for the first time in her miserable life face the consequences of her actions. Screw around and find out. You try to be nice to somebody, they take advantage of you like that. You give them an inch, they take a mile, and eventually they get so greedy it just falls all up in their face. Way to go, OP. Karen story time. Good luck getting into your car in the morning. Posted by Fudgenearby464. So I live in an apartment in the city and we have our own parking lot, which is great as there are little to no parking spaces nearby. Up until a year ago, the individual parking spaces were not labeled, so sometimes people would just leave just enough space for your car not to fit in between. My next door neighbor, she's in her 40s I think, who is the Karen of this story, would constantly do this, which would drive me, my dad, and most of our neighbors insane. Especially since there was a section of the parking lot where you could fit 2 cars, and 2 sections where you could fit 3. She even hit my car a few times, which I personally never saw, but I did see my car paint on her car. My car is the only car that is that specific color in the entire parking lot. For some background, I'm 20 and female, and I got my driver's license in January 2022 when I was 18. Now, I may be somewhat inexperienced, but I dang well know how to fit my car into tight spaces, especially since my school's parking lot was also unlabeled and teenagers absolutely do not care to leave space for someone else to park next to them. And my classes often didn't start until 9 or 10 a.m., so by the time that I would get to school, there were either no or really tight spaces left for me to park. I know how to fit a smallish car into a very tight space. Back to the story. For 10 years that we have lived in that apartment, we've had a problem with Karen and her parking, her dad too. She drives a large SUV, while my dad and I drive a station wagon and a coupe, respectively. Karen loved to park in the part of the lot where you could fit 2 cars, but since she's a bad driver, no, she is really a bad driver, I've seen her drive, and a jerk, she would constantly park in a way that you could maybe fit a motorcycle next to her on either side. The same was with her dad up until the individual parking spaces were labeled. Her dad would actually park between the lines and you could fit a car next to his, which was surprising, but not Karen. She continued to double park. She even parallel parked a few times, taking up 3 parking spaces. After a few months, she started parking a bit better, sometimes over the line, but not in a way that my dad and I had problems fitting our cars next to her. Now, my dad and I can be extremely petty people, so even before the parking spaces were formally labeled, my dad and I would occasionally park as close as possible to her car, so she couldn't get in as easily. But you see, my dad's a big guy, 6'2", 200 pounds, so he couldn't possibly park as close as I can and still be able to get out of his car. I, on the other hand, I'm 6 feet and a measly 130, 140 pounds. Basically, I can fit into and get through extremely narrow spaces with ease. Karen is a few inches shorter than me, but at least 30 pounds heavier, so my dad parking next to her would just be an inconvenience. But me parking next to her as close as I can means that she has to enter through her passenger side door. I've seen it happen a few times since one of the windows in our apartment overlooked those particular spaces. It was hilarious every time, and she couldn't say a word to us because she got herself in that mess. Last year, I left for college and I left my car at home, and my dad drove my car more than his. And when I would go back home for the weekend or the holidays, Karen wouldn't know which one of us drove the car last, and she didn't have the guts to berate my dad. But I am certain that she would try to berate me if she ever saw me getting out of my car. For actual years, I've waited for the perfect opportunity to completely block her from getting into her car, and lo and behold, a few weeks ago, I was coming back from my boyfriend's house and I saw her car was over the line on the driver's side. The parking lot was half empty, but I gladly squeezed my car in reverse. she never parks in reverse next to hers, to the point where even I had trouble getting out. I even had to fold my side mirror so she doesn't rip it out while backing out. This would inconvenience her cause she would, yet again, have to get in from the passenger side. But when my genius of a father came back to work, he, as he told, wanted to park closer to the entrance, but caught a glimpse of my car and the proximity of it to Karen's, realized what I had done, and proceeded to back into the space on the other side of her car as close as he could without damaging her side mirror, completely blocking her in. He entered the apartment and started laughing, asking me if I did what I did on purpose and informing me of what he had done moments prior. The only part of this story that I regret is not seeing Karen's reaction to her situation in the morning and her trying to get into her car. On the bright side, I don't think I've ever seen her park over the line since then. Maybe she learned her lesson after a whole decade. This commenter says, haha, that's awesome, and this is truly as petty revenge as it gets. I mean, this idea is a classic, although I do wonder, what if Karen had an emergency? What would happen then? Weird neighbors, can I do anything? Posted by Fresh Made Dumplings. Yum. Just to preface, my family and I have been living in the same neighborhood for over 20 years now, and we've never had issues with anyone. Our neighborhood is quiet and mostly consists of older people and families. Everyone minds their own business, or they're cordial with each other. So this family moved in about 2-ish years ago, and I am 99% sure that they rent the home. The family consists of a father and, I don't even know, 6 or 7 kids? 4 or 5 of them are teenagers and young adults, and there are a few young children. I don't know if the kids even go to school because I see them all the time. I think for a living, they pick up used items and sell them as they often do yard sales, which I don't think they're allowed to do, as we live on a major road which can be hazardous when people stop to park to buy things. Not sure if I explained that well. They always have older cars and have car troubles. I've noticed that people come to look at their cars, not sure to help them or to check out the cars before buying them. Anyways, they've gotten into an argument with the neighbors to the right of them. We know them and we grew up with them, and they're nice people, sanitation workers, and random people. They're loud, and I oftentimes hear them yelling at each other. They ride their dirt bikes around the neighborhood. I've called the cops on them a few times because of this, but obviously not much happens from that as they continue to do so. I've spoken to other neighbors about them before, and we've agreed that they're weird and give people dirty looks. I've only interacted with this family once when one of the young kids kicked a ball onto our property and one of the older siblings asked if I could retrieve it. Things with that family started getting worse when one evening while I was watering my plants outside this past May, one of the older girls drove by and called me a dirty you-know-what. I have it on camera. I told my friend about it and she suggested that I file a police report in case something happens, which I eventually did. To continue, this family is friends with this other neighbor. Let's call her Emily. I've never spoken to Emily prior to a few months ago, even though she's lived in the neighborhood for almost a decade. No beef, by the way. I've never seen much of her until this last year. I don't want this to come off the wrong way or that I'm judging her, but there is something visibly off with her, possibly drug usage. She can be erratic. One day, while I was taking a walk, Emily was walking in my direction with her dog. She confronted me, and mind you, this was my first time speaking to her besides waving hello, and said that family claimed that I accused Emily of stealing my packages and moving my sandals or something. I was in disbelief. This confirmed my suspicions that this family didn't like me, but finding out that they'd lied about me was a whole other level. First of all, none of this ever happened. Second, why would I speak badly about Emily out loud to the point where this family can hear me when I know that they're friends? Emily and I cleared the air, and she continued to tell me how this family makes fun of me because I like to sunbathe and sit outside in my bralettes. Who freaking cares? I'm not nude, I'm on my property, not bothering anyone. And they talk crap about other people in the neighborhood. Emily also told me that she has a problem with them as well because they keep manipulating her or something. This happened back in May, and since then, Emily and I have spoken a few times, but not recently, as I haven't seen her. I'm glad we cleared the air, however, I know that they're still friends to this day. It's absolutely wild to me that these people have this much hatred towards me, even though I haven't done anything to them. My home and neighborhood have always been a safe place for me, but ever since they moved in and actually harassed me, makes me feel very uncomfortable. I haven't confronted them or said anything to them, even though I want to, because they're the type of people where they have nothing to lose and they'll definitely escalate the situation. When I filed a police report and spoke to the police officer, he said that I could ask for a mediation officer to come out and speak with them, but I don't think that'll do much. And then this morning, Emily gave my brother multiple dirty looks and spoke under her breath as he was getting into his car to go to work, so now it seems like she has a problem with us. I don't know what to do. Should I continue to ignore them and be the bigger person? Should I somehow contact the homeowner and inform them of what's been going on with their tenants? And if I do, how do I go about that? And I don't think I can legally do anything, as they haven't physically done anything to me. So the only legal option is to get a mediator to speak with them, which I don't care to do. Commenters say to contact the owners in your HOA if they're in one, but really could put up cameras if they were doing anything, but it sounds like they're just being bad neighbors. I hope you get out of this, OP. It sounds like a rough situation. Karen slapped and pushed me because I was ignoring her and not helping. Posted by Praveen Shankar 007. I am an 18-year-old male, born completely deaf and mute. Also, I am partially blind in my left eye. I live with my sister, 28-year-old female, who had been taking care of me since our parents died. Recently, she got married and went on her honeymoon, so I'm on my own for a few weeks. This happened yesterday. Usually, whenever I go out, I'm accompanied by my sister due to my disability. But now, since she is on her honeymoon, I had to go out alone. There was a new supermarket opened in our area, and I needed some items, so I decided to go there and grab them. Nah, my bad for wearing a red-colored shirt almost similar to the employees working there. But if you look closely, you could see that it was not the uniform. I was at the electronics section looking for some old batteries when I see an old man struggling to get some DVDs at the top shelf. Since I'm tall, well, I helped him. He thanked me, I can do lip reading, and then he went on his way. Then I began looking for the batteries. That's when I felt someone grab my left wrist. I turned around and a woman in her late 40s slapped me. She was speaking something, but I couldn't follow her lips as she spoke too fast. However, I was able to catch some words like you, ignore, job, and so on. So I signed to her that I am deaf. Apparently, this was a wrong move because she became more irate towards the signs. Again, she was yelling something, but I couldn't catch anything. So I took my notebook and started writing that I am deaf and mute. Before I could finish, she grabbed my notebook and pen and threw them away. Then she slapped me again and pushed me to the ground. Luckily, by this time, a store employee came to see what the commotion was about. He saw me on the ground and helped me up, and then he asked me what happened. Before I can sign to him, Karen starts to yell at the employee. I don't know what she said as she was not facing me. After she finished, I signed to the employee that I cannot hear or speak. Fortunately, he understood and explained this to the lady. But she is still not convinced. She tries to assault me again, but I moved away. Then I wrote and showed the employee to call the cops on her. The employee nodded and called the cops. Karen tried to run away, but the security caught her. The police arrived in about 10 minutes. They first talked to the employee, who explained the situation about how Karen assaulted me because she mistook me for a store employee. One police officer comes and speaks to me. I understood that he wanted my version of events, so I wrote everything down and showed it to the officer. Then they went to check the CCTV footage, and they came back and asked me if I wanted to press charges. I gladly said yes. Karen was then placed in handcuffs and given a free ride at the back of a police cruiser. The manager then explained to me that Karen thought I worked there and she became angry that I ignored her. She had been standing on my left side, so obviously I couldn't see her. The store manager then offered me a 50% discount on the products. I texted my sister about the events that happened and she was livid. Oh, did I mention that my sister is a lawyer? She told me that she herself will be handling the case and would see to it that Karen would get the maximum time. Court date is in around 40 days. I will update about it after court. Edit. I noticed many were asking about masks. She was indeed wearing one, but during that encounter she had it on under her chin and not covering the nose or mouth. Also, lawyers in India can represent their family in court as long as they are not directly involved in it and the judge is not a relative to the lawyer. Lawyer up, HOA illegally forces us to do this, so we fight back, and here's how. Click the video on your screen, you don't want to miss this crazy fallout, and I'll see you there.